Welcome to Exploring the Metaverse, where we explore the depths of technology in the ever-evolving technological world for everyday people. Today, we open your eyes and your mind to the free and available alternatives of those big tech giant monopolies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, and many, many more, and their grip on your wallet. Each month, there's more that we can do than just be servants to the monthly subscription, the expensive downloads, the overrated bloatware, inefficient crap. I mean, some of it's still pretty good, but Tio, welcome, brother. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Matt. How are you? This is something that I find really, really interesting. I've always liked to dabble in the open source, the free and open source, not open source specifically, free and open source, which there's a difference, and we might touch on that later. But yeah, it's very fascinating. It can be the best thing ever. It can be a rabbit hole of things that don't work, and
now,
to say the least.
Exactly. Now, before you say too much, let me carry us forward directly into this first and I think incredibly relevant topic that is floating around right now about Germany. Now it's not the entire country, right? It's just a certain state or like province type.
Province.
Yeah. So a section of the country who are switching over the entire governmental sector, if I'm understanding this article correctly, and taking them away from the big Microsoft Word and Windows, which is a big deal. Changing the whole operating system for people is a big deal, but not nearly as scary as it might seem. And doing this on a large scale for a publicly funded institution such as a government, I think that really speaks volumes as to, the level of commitment and the potential for success on a large scale. Now, why, Teal, would they be doing something like this? Like, what is the big benefit to the government and ultimately to the people who voted them in?
Well, I think that first of all is cut on costs. That must be the first thing, because if you think about it, like Microsoft, like every other company, is moving their Office suite to basically a subscription. Microsoft 365, that's what it is. They charge you, what is it, $10
$11 a month. I have it at home. Yeah.
And
that's Canadian, by the way.
Suite. Exactly. To use their suite of Office programs. And so can you imagine how much they could charge a government with 30,000 employees to use those services, even if they don't, not every 30,000 of the employees uses that program, but they still have to have it available for everybody.
But as a general taxpayer, it sounds great to think that we could save that money, right?
Yes, absolutely. And with a suite of LibreOffice, which I just figured out today that you use as well.
I do have a very specific use case for it that I love. But yeah, so LibreOffice, that's LIBRE. We're going to put links to these different free open source software in the show description. Okay, guys? So if you're listening and you're interested in anything you hear about, you can just check it out down below. And yeah, sorry, Tio. I just wanted to make it known that we're going to try to share this with all the listeners so that they can get some value out of some of this software themselves.
Yeah, and they can try it out because it's free and open source, so they can try it out, they can install it, they can see what's the difference and what's not. And basically, it's an Office suite. It works.
So that's LibreOffice.
95% as Microsoft Office. It gives you the whole suite, the whole shabam of programs that Office has. And I've used it when I was in school. And most of the times, if I would say 99% of the times, there was no compatibility issues with the file formats. It can save in different Word formats, in different PowerPoint
It's
formats.
so good at
Com-
editing PDF documents, which it's a bit like, I don't want to use the word janky, but it's a little bit janky. It's a bit difficult to control at first. Some of the things seemed a bit rudimentary. Like the software design seemed to take me back many generations, and it was sort of in a simpler state. But then once I learned what I needed, how to do what I needed to do, now I love it so much because I feel like I have so much control.
yeah, and those PDF editing programs are expensive.
Oh,
Like you,
jeez. Oh,
even the cheapest ones, and
yeah.
I think they're even jankier if you want
They're
to
It's
keep using that term.
prohibitively expensive for just if you want to do something like once or twice a month or like every so often. I don't want to pay $50 a month, or I don't know the exact. I'm just throwing a number out there, but a large amount of money for a relatively minimal amount of use of the product.
Yeah, and so so with the government moving to, well, part of the government, or let's say a provincial government of Germany moving to LibreOffice, I think it gives exposure to how things like free and open source can be actually used for productivity, not only in the government or not only for the personal use, but in a larger scale. And I think that this is important. This is putting an eye on how things have been moving towards this kind of like subscription service. Before we used to, when we were growing up, if you wanted a program, you used to buy it.
Yep, I'd
You
go
bought
down to
it,
London Drugs, shout out London Drugs, and I'd go buy it in a little back of the store computer section and take home the box and install, put the disc inside of the computer. The kids these days don't even know. They don't know the
and
struggle.
you would have support for how many years that they would
Yeah,
support that software or whatever.
long time.
Sometimes they would upgrade you to the next version of it because you paid a lifetime fee for it. But with a subscription, that means that even if you don't use it, you still have to pay that subscription. Paying that subscription is income that goes into these companies steadily. They can make their profits, make their quarterly gains, and keep going. Meanwhile, the consumer keeps paying for a service that they may use once, twice a year.
And I think, when we talk about consumers, I'd like to sort of clarify a really modern and specific sort of use case, or sort of an individual archetype, is the social media content creating people, the folks out there working with audio and video on the daily, scripting and creative work. And there's so many tools, and I'd like to get into them in another episode if you're interested. But just in general, each of the multiple tasks that a person might like to do has all these different sort of tools available to them, but each individual thing seems to have its own big expensive subscription service, and it's so prohibitively expensive to have access to these tools. And the German government seems to really understand that the cost doesn't necessarily isn't worth them being able to get the same value for free, and not only just get it, but to be able to customize it to their own use case scenario. I
Yeah,
think it's great that they're not paying into the Microsoft monthly subscription.
absolutely. And you brought up the content creators. We can transition to another piece of software that is very, very much used in the content creation world, and that is OBS, something
Oh yeah.
that you
Oh
brought up for and introduced me to, and it's amazing. That program is
yeah.
amazing. And as you can hear, we're dating ourselves when you say program here, huh?
Well, they call it an app now. It's an application. Did you guys know that's short for application? I don't know. Most people do, but yeah. Open broadcast software. I think it's
Studio.
studio. Excuse me. Yeah, Open Broadcast Studio, or Broadcaster Studio. It is. it gives you the ability to create audio and video pieces in a multitude of ways. It allows you to go live and to broadcast your live stream. I host my shout out Aerolic Gaming stream on OBS, and it really gives me this granular level of control, but it also has the ability to add plugins to it. So again, open source community developed software that can change the way that OBS works in a nearly infinite number of ways. And so that if you're trying to broadcast your local church service, or if you're trying to make a video game stream, or maybe you're recording your guitar play, or maybe you want to live stream the bird that's nesting in the box outside your window, or there's millions and millions and millions of people around the world these days trying to create things, and it can be prohibitively expensive to try to get into creating content. And I know for a fact that there's so many talented, creative, and interesting people out there that have their messages that they want to share with the world, who just aren't able to, because they don't think that the accessibility is there for them. But this open and accessible and free software, it can not just change an entire governmental sector, but like you said, you can take and create and be expressive for free.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tool. I didn't even imagine that something this powerful for like changing your audio settings, changing your video settings.
Well, that's how my
Uh,
background looks how it looks, is because I'm streaming my OBS virtual camera. So if you have Skype or Zoom or Microsoft Teams or some other conferencing software, and you want your camera to look a little better than your colleagues, I happen to have a green screen and a bunch of lights and all that. But with NVIDIA Broadcast background removal tool, you can achieve the same effect. But what I'm saying is it allows me to customize my camera feed in any way that I can creatively do so. I can have a video playing behind this. I can do creative things like that that might not seem, it's a minor detail, but when you're in a professional setting or in an educational setting, these kind of micro differences, not just creative settings, can all amplify you a step above your competition or your colleagues, your fellow students, and get that edge to being, a little bit of a higher level production. And I don't know. I just think that the accessibility of it gives us so much to work with.
yeah, it's that's really a piece of software that um, is is underrated for what it actually can do, and it's all free, all open source. And I said I was. I think that this is a good time to explain the difference between just open source and free and open source. Open source means that somebody is just releasing their code, but it's so the code is available to everybody. They can go and check it on GitHub or whatever. But basically, the product can be sold, and even if it's open source as a project, the software itself is will cost money. The benefit of having open source is that you can go and check, anybody can go and check the code and make sure of what is in the code if they find some trackers or whatever that they're using. So having the open source can give you the freedom of actually going and checking the code and making sure that all of this code is not having tracking your data or tracking what you're doing or how you use the software or whatever, but it's still probably, or in some cases it could be paid. Free and open source means that not only you have the benefit of the open source and you can go and check the code and whatever, it means that the product is actually free. So there's nobody charging you to buy that software, that piece of software, and there's a huge difference between them. And the fact that some of the software out there is free and open source, and a powerful tool like OBS is free and open source is actually amazing.
Yeah, it's very routinely developed. It's very routinely updated, and features added multiple times a month. Sometimes it seems like I'm always getting a pop-up window asking me to update. And in some settings, some users who are inexperienced might think that that's an interruption or an irritant. But when you realize what that really means, it means that people on the other end of the software are creating new solutions to people's problems. They're solving bugs that exist, and they're adding features that are requested, and they're bringing it up to modern standards all the time, which just means that you can do more and more with it and still never pay a cent.
Yeah, it's
VLC is basically a media player, right? Where OBS
yeah.
is a media creation tool, allowing you to create video and audio and all sorts of creative video like that. This is for consuming media. You've downloaded a file, and maybe it's not running on Windows, or it's not running. I think it's on Linux. Yeah, it's on Linux. They also have it
It's on
on
every
Apple.
platform.
Yeah, all the platforms, and it will allow you to play basically any file from any other platform for free without any ads or any interruptions. It just works, and it seems to be like there is almost no better media player that I can think of.
As an all-in-one, absolutely. It has
Even paid
every
options that I'm aware of. I don't know of any paid option that's as good as
no,
VLC is as it's free.
exactly. It has all the codecs, and if it won't, it will look up for you. It will find a way to play that file for you. It it will play audio and video. And a little known fact: it will actually stream from online and from your library. If you have a NAS or whatever, you can use VLC to stream directly from your NAS or from your library of videos through IP address and whatever. It's incredibly
Why are
powerful.
you just
Again,
telling me that now while we're live here?
because you need to know. You didn't know that VLC
No,
you could stream.
no, I had no idea. God,
Oh
who
yeah,
who
you
knew
can.
we were getting a live subject feature reveal here? Deal, that's awesome. Okay, that's actually really cool because yeah, I should check that out. I mean, it's not something I would maybe use all the time, but I could see
No, but
building a nice little streaming setup for for the right kind of family would be wonderful.
yeah, and you can stream from a device to another via IP. You can um, with I think a couple of plugins, you can basically stream from your phone directly to the computer, a file that you have on your phone via IP address on the same network. It's it's incredibly powerful, and it's been around for a long time. I
Oh,
remember
forever.
VLC when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
It was the thing to use because it was easy to use. It would find a
And it was
solution.
faster to open, and it would be like less laggy on a crappy old computer too.
Yeah.
Like, it's very optimized, and it's amazing that you don't have to pay. Now, I recommend that if people are in the position to donate to these projects, I mean, if you're getting value from it for years and years and years, it's kind of like
Yes.
a WinZip. I kind of digress a little bit, like a WinZip license. I mean, to the nerds out there, maybe one day I might,
One day.
one day,
I don't even use WinZip. I use 7-zip. So
and that's an open source, free and open source
exactly,
alternative. Very,
exactly.
very, very beautiful. I have a little bit of nostalgia towards some of these pieces of software, as funny as that might seem. I love having Winamp, free and open
Yeah.
source music player on my computer. I find it, I just like looking at the skin of it. I like, it just takes me back to like some of my earliest days. And that's kind of where I think you and I really are coming from, in this show, is our love for this topic, for these topics, is very sincere and genuine, and something that we've been interested in for most of our lives. And to sort of be here to talk about it as it evolves and as it progresses and moves forward, I just find it so interesting and so fun. But anyway, there's actually more progress happening out there in the world at large, on this subject. Tell me more.
Well, another piece of software that brings me back a long time is Firefox. Firefox, another free and
Oh,
open
the
source
web browser.
project. Yes, It was my first alternative to Internet Explorer. Um, it's one of the few browsers left. I think it's Firefox and Safari. Safari uses a different engine.
Well, Safari
Uh,
there, you know.
exactly. But Firefox uses a different engine from Chromium and the Chromium-based browsers, which are everything else. Like all the other smaller, big browsers that you have, like Chrome is based on the Chromium project. Edge, which is the new browser for Windows, the new Internet Explorer, is based on Chromium. Opera, there's a multitude of smaller browsers like Vivaldi, which is the one I'm using now, that are
Whoa,
based
whoa,
on
whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's just stop back here a second. Wait a second. Wait. What are you using as a browser?
Vivaldi.
As in, like, isn't that a musical
Yeah, he is a musical composer, but yeah, it's a browser. It's free and 95% open source. They
so do
have
you
a
have to pay for it, or what do you mean?
no, it's free and
For free?
95% over open source, meaning that the 5%, there's a 5% of proprietary code that you use in the browser for certain things. So it's not completely open source, but 95% of it
So
is.
just the trackers in it are not
I
open.
don't think it's trackers. I can't remember what. I think it's something to do with like music or video playback or something like that. But they explain it pretty
So they have
extensively
a
on their.
transparent approach on
Yes,
their
yes,
website type of thing.
yeah. They explain to you what is the proprietary code that they're using.
And again,
Um,
you don't, you're yeah, I think you're really supporting a very noble cause, because the more we allow, in my opinion, the big monolithic corporations to control every aspect of what we do, and even as an iPhone user who's in the walled garden of Apple just on my
Speaking
phone.
of which, how did
Listen,
your
listen,
poll
whoa,
end?
whoa,
How did your
whoa.
poll end yesterday?
46% for Apple, like 41 or 2 for Android, and then there's Samsung, and then the other bits and pieces for other.
Oh, okay. Shout out again to Elric Gaming.
All right, Tio. So one additional company, we've talked about these monolithic corporations, or I've said that anyway, but a company that seems to be at the forefront of the modern tech space, OpenAI, of course, and their Chat GPT and the large language model, which now, to clarify, ChatGPT 3.5 is free to use for people to just log in with a Gmail account or what have you, and create an account,
Hmm.
and you can use the large language model that everybody seems to be finally getting on board with. I told y'all in the beginning, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's a different thing. But they also have ChatGPT 4, which is a paid model. It's certainly not free nor open source, but it seems to me that they're starting to sort of open up and really taking in the corporate side of the world and giving them access and openness that maybe is more aligned with OpenAI's original intentions.
Yeah, I think that OpenAI was started as an open source project for AI language models, and it drifted out to the corporation side of
Billions of
things.
Microsoft money.
Exactly. Microsoft doesn't own him, but they own him basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't buy him, but they bought everything else.
Yeah, her sugar
That's
daddy's not
exactly,
actually owning her,
exactly,
but
exactly. So now people have decided, well, not people, but the world is trying to actually use open source models in the AI
so not just ChatGPT, but other
yes,
large language models that
models.
can have a similar outcome, but are not controlled by Sam Altman.
Basically, yes. So the people get together and try to create their own language model based on open source, free and open source.
I love that.
Uh,
Can we do that?
I wish, I
We have
wish
an
I had
exploring the
that kind of
metaverse model.
knowledge. I wish
Maybe
I
one
could.
day.
Exactly. But yeah, so the world is opening up, and as usual, there is going to be the corporate side of things, and there's going to be a
So, what are
model
they
that
doing in a corporate setting to utilize this large language model, especially the open source version of it, to get value that is it valuing? It's probably valuing the bottom line. I mean, money. It's always money, money, money. Like, how are they saving money by using a open source large language model in the average company these days? What do you think the use cases are to start?
well, I think that a company that would open their mind to a different language model that is open source um, can benefit from different people that contribute to the project, and that's one of the biggest benefits of open source projects, is that anybody can contribute to that project. And we can see the same probably happening in the open source AI models that are coming out, which sadly at the moment have a very low market share. Same thing as Linux in the operating
Now,
systems.
are they operating at the same capacity as the market leader in terms of output?
Absolutely not.
And
That's sad because the market leader will be for I think a little while, but things are going to start changing in a little bit. But the market leader is still OpenAI, and there are other companies that are trying to catch up with them. Google is one of them. The Llama model from Facebook has a decent market share, but uh, I think that open source is going to start catching up. It all depends. Usually, what happens in open source projects is the fragmentation is huge.
well, but
So,
on a corporate scale, right? If one company fragments off the main chain into their own version of a customer service assistant bot that is only designed for Amazon customer service and doesn't have training in anything else, isn't that a good thing? Like, isn't that a good thing to have that fragmentation that means it isn't just an open ended model with bias and other flaws built into it, but something that I, as a consumer, could trust a little more, knowing that it doesn't have all of the other random nonsense, but just what it needs, just enough information to do its job, and maybe not so much to take over the world?
exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. And as I said before, with open source, you can check their code, you can check how they use the data, how they elaborate the data, and all this kind of stuff. So yes, if Amazon or whoever decides to pick up an open source language model or open source AI model to say it it could entice a customer to use that service more compared to another service that's closed source and that they can trust more. And that's usually the thought process that happens with people that are interested in open source, is that they trust more a community of people working on the project that give access to their code and that can be scrutinized by anybody,
Yeah, because
compared
I think that a
to
big
a close.
worry of people, right, is these tools are scary. They're new. They're potentially dangerous based on movies that people have watched. And I am one that wants to believe in the future being good and these tools being a benefit to you and me and everybody else. And I really think that what you're saying is helping add a sense of comfort, a sense of reassurance that
Yes,
we have a layer of oversight built into the process of deployment, not just that everyone is going to go wild. All these companies are, but it's not just controlled by one source and they get to set all the rules.
yes, that's basically what it comes down to, right? And I think that there's a shift in the perspective of how things are going. I don't know if you looked up lately the Linux numbers over operating system, but there's a website
Oh,
that,
a small uptick, isn't there? In
yes, it went from, like, in the last 5 years, it went from like a 1.5% to a 4% market share. And that's basically just watching how people are using, which browser are they using, and on what platform are they using it for desktops. But if you think about it, yeah, it's 1.5
now
to
to
4%.
clarify, Linux is what?
It's an open source operating system.
There we go. And I know that, but I know that some of our listeners might
Absolutely.
not know
Sorry.
what Linux is. I don't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, but just to
No, 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 absolutely.
expand on the relevance of why that's
Yeah,
such a big deal, because Linux competes directly with Apple and Microsoft Windows, like Apple operating. I don't even know. I don't even know if they're like. I'm not an Apple fanboy. Tio thinks I am, but I'm not. I mean, anyway, carry on.
you are. No, I'm just
I'm
joking. He isn't. He's like me, but he defends them a little bit more. I like their projects.
just the
I like
iPhone,
some of their
okay?
products. I just don't like the way they operate
Well,
on a
that
certain level.
that
But
is
that's
a
a
not an open source conversation. That is the
exactly,
complete polar opposite
exactly.
universe.
But yes, it's an operating system that's been around for a long, long time.
Long time. Linux is famous in the nerd world.
Exactly, and just the fact that, if you think about it, in the last 5 years, it went from 1.5% as an operating system. So people that are using it on their personal device, or maybe even a government or whatever, it went from 1.5% to 4%. And I understand that that's a small market share. But if you think about it, in 5 years, they went 2.5 times of their market share. They uptake 2.5 times of their market share. And that's a lot,
Oh yes.
especially for a project that is open source and is, you need some tinkering, but I think that it's getting to the point that it works
For the
enough.
average, I think here's the thing, right? For the average basic functions and tasks of your sort of vanilla computer user, and I say that respectfully to my non-nerd friends, but just to say that general web browsing, general Word document handling, media consumption, video and music files, and even some gaming in some slightly specific use cases seems to be, from my understanding, very, very straightforward, very streamlined, way less nerdy code command line input required, and in some cases, a very very beginner to moderate computer user can find some real success and enjoyment with using Linux. And I've known a few people over the years who have definitely committed themselves in a deeply passionate fashion towards it. And I know that one of my Golf Clash streaming friends streams Golf Clash on his Linux based setup, and sometimes it's amazing, and for a long time he has no problems, but sometimes he's got to redo the whole system, things go wrong.
Hmm.
So it's not for the faint of heart, but it really is
Yeah.
exciting to think that Microsoft might not be everyone's daddy forever. Maybe we could have a little bit of a little competition, perhaps a little more.
Yes. And that's, I think that that's opening up for a lot of things, and it crosses back into the AI models and whatever. I think that people are paying more attention to open source projects, like the good ones, the ones that you can trust, the ones that
And
are,
we've really highlighted, I think, some of the key pieces that have long-term stability. They've been demonstrated to be reliable and safe and very, very valuable. If they interest you, you should not hesitate to give VLC, Firefox, OBS, Linux, if you're a little bit brave, a try, especially if you have a second system, older system,
yeah,
repurpose an old computer, get Linux up and running on it and learn something new, try something different. I've done it in the past on an old laptop, and I'd like to do it again in the future, because it's a challenge to learn something new. But then when you do, you open up a whole new toolbox and skill set that it can really progress and propel you forward.
dabbing in Linux taught me a lot of how Windows works and how to solve problems on Windows. So it gives you a better idea of how a computer actually works. and how integrated some systems are. And it can give you some problem solving skills that you may have not found in your common use in Windows, which I think it's a good thing to have that knowledge, especially when you're the IT tech and you're the go to person to help somebody with their
I am not
technology.
available to build computers because I do not want to be a lifetime tech support agent. No, I'm
Exactly,
joking.
right?
Certain people I will. Hit me up. It's all
Yes.
good. All right, Teal, bro. I think we
I think
should
we wrap it up. Yeah.
head on out. We should thank these beautiful listeners, viewers, and people who are participating in the podcast. I appreciate you very much, bro, for putting in all the extra time and effort, helping us bring it together. You're a great producer and co-host. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate the listeners that we have, the very few that will hope we'll create a great community around here
And
slowly but
share
surely.
with a friend if you think there's somebody out there who is on the same page or interested in learning more. If you have ideas for topics, suggestions for the show, comments, questions, or concerns, email us directly, exploring the metaverse together at gmail.com. You'll find that in the description, links to all the different open source software and the sources of the reference, the articles that we referenced today. Thanks again, bro. Hope you have a beautiful day. Guys, thanks for listening.
Have a good night, everybody.